Why, hello there, and welcome to another edition of the podcast that I, your host, David Woodruff, lovingly call the Woodruff Report. Now, where I'm sitting out here in San Francisco, the weather is cold and dreary, but in the magical, mythical sports universe, it's sunny like Arizona because the Cavs and Warriors are facing each other for the third straight time in the NBA Finals. The Cavs took care of the Celtics in 5, the Warriors swept the Spurs, and we've got the matchup that we've all been waiting for. Finally, we get to see Steph and LeBron go at it, and a new villain or superhero, depending on who you support, has been added into the equation, Kevin Durant. So this, as I said before, this is the matchup that we've all been waiting for. Everyone predicted this to be the final at the beginning of the season. Now, some people may look at that and say, oh, the NBA season has been boring. I'm looking at you, Stephen A. Smith. But to other sports fans, this is what we've wanted to see, the third act. The rubber game, in terms of a baseball term, the rubber game. The Warriors won game 1, the Cavs won game 2. Who's going to take the rubber game? Game 3, and then maybe are we going to get game 4, game 5? This is really going to be the matchup that defines this decade, at least in my opinion, in the NBA. It's hard to say that now because we're in the moment, but this is definitely a matchup of many future Hall of Famers. You've got LeBron, one of the greatest players of all time. You've got Steph Curry. You've got Kevin Durant. What more could you ask for? So we're going to go more in depth about that later on this show. And I mean, there's not a whole lot more that I really want to talk about. My last few episodes have been very long. This one will probably be a little bit more brief. I do want to talk about a little bit of football and not the American kind, because we've got all the European leagues finishing. Serie A, La Liga, the Bundesliga, and of course the Premier League have all finished up. We know who the champions are, and more importantly, we now have a picture of who is going to be in the Champions League and who is going to be in the Europa League next year. So I do want to talk a little bit about qualification among Europe's top leagues. So we've got a basketball and football slate coming at you. I hope you enjoy this podcast. I really think you are going to. I'll try to lighten up this dreary day. So getting going in 3, 2. If you have been living under a rock and haven't heard that the Cavaliers are playing the Warriors in the NBA Finals, well, the Cavaliers are playing the Warriors in the NBA Finals. The third act, the third edition, we've got LeBron and Kyrie on one side. We've got Steph and KD and Clay and Draymond on the other. And we've got an epic finals matchup coming at you, the rubber game of the 3-game series. Who is going to assert their dominance and prove to be the team of the decade? Who is going to show up and be that team? We'll find out. So I want to talk a little bit about how the two teams got there, disposing of their respective opponents, and then I'll give you a little Woodruff Report preview of the NBA Finals. What are the matchups to watch? What is the prediction when we look into the Woodruff Report's magical crystal ball? Who do we see coming out on top and in how many games? All that is coming at you in our first segment on the Woodruff Report, and that is the NBA segment. So, the Cavaliers got to the NBA Finals by disposing of the Celtics in 5 games. So I'm going to start by talking about Game 3, which the Celtics shockingly won in Cleveland 111-108 without Isaiah Thomas. And once IT, the Celtics' best player, was ruled out for the playoffs, everyone expected a clean sweep. I mean, you've now got LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love going against a relatively no-named Celtics team that was already inferior to the Cavaliers to begin with, talent-wise. So the story of this game was Avery Bradley's game-winning 3 with 0.1 seconds left on the clock. And Brad Stevens drew up a great play out of the timeout. The ball gets over to Avery Bradley. He shoots. It hits about every part of the rim that it can possibly does, bounces straight up, hits the rim again, swirls around, crazy shot, somehow goes in and gives the Celtics the win in Game 3. So now we're thinking, okay, 2-1 with Game 4 still to come in Cleveland. Was this Isaiah Thomas injury not a curse after all, but a blessing? The ball was definitely moving around. Tyronn Lue made some crazy comment after Game 3 about how the Celtics are like more difficult to guard than the Warriors are because they move the ball. Terrible statement. Tyronn Lue, in my opinion, not that great of a coach anyway, but I won't get into that. But the series at 2-1, and we're thinking if the Celtics can possibly take Game 4 in Cleveland and put up another performance, play good defense like they did against the Cavs in Game 3, then we've got a 2-2 series going back to Boston in front of that rowdy home court. And with Brad Stevens as a coach, he gets a lot of credit for what the Celtics have done, deservedly so. This Celtics team can hang with anybody. So at 2-1, Game 4 was going to be very interesting, but the Cavs did take care of business. Now, in Game 4, the Celtics actually started out pretty hot. They were leading by 10 points after the first quarter, but this game really came down to Kyrie Irving, just amazing, dazzling with the ball in his hand. His handles are incredible, and when he starts making shots, it's really tough to guard him because he has such good handles, he can create space for himself, and it's not like he's the only player on the floor that can score for the Cavs. If you want to double Kyrie or give help to Kyrie's defender, oh yeah, there's a guy named LeBron James who he can pass the ball to, and LeBron James, I mean, he's one of the best players of all time. So when one of the best players of all time is your second option in a game, that's definitely a nightmarish formula for an opposing defense. So let's go to the box score, and it was the Kyrie show. The Magician had 42 points, including 21 or 22. I think it was 21, don't quote me on that, in the third quarter. LeBron James, that guy, chipped in with 34 points as well. And Kevin Love continued his good playoffs with 17. So the big three for the Cavs, putting out tremendous output, and the Cavs were able to take this game. On the other side of the ball for Boston, Avery Bradley had 19, Al Horford had 16, and Jay Crowder had 18. But when Kyrie goes for 42, LeBron has 34, K-Love has 17. Unless you have someone putting up like 40 or 50, you're not going to be able to compete with that, especially when you're outmatched talent-wise. So Cleveland took care of business. Kyrie showed that he's the real closer on this team. You may expect LeBron James to be the closer, but when you get late in a game, Kyrie Irving is the guy who's going to have the ball in his hands for Cleveland, and that was, of course, shown in last year's postseason when he hit that game-winning, eventually turned out to be the game-winning three over Steph Curry in Game 7. So Kyrie Irving cemented his status as the closer for Cleveland, and more importantly, Cleveland took a 3-1 lead going into Game 5 in Boston, and they took care of business, didn't mess around, won in Game 5, didn't prolong the series, winning Game 5 135-102, another demolition in a playoffs full of demolitions. And I do appreciate a good blowout, but, I mean, it's getting excessive at this point. So I think the critics who have said these playoffs are boring do have some ammunition. I mean, there have been a lot of blowouts in this playoffs, and the Warriors and Cavs have been a lot better than everybody else. But still, those who say, like, this is the worst postseason ever because there's not much competition, no, you're getting what you wanted. You're getting the Cavs-Warriors Act 3 final that you wanted. It doesn't really matter how they get there in the end. So anyway, back to Game 5 and the 135-102 win for Cleveland. LeBron had 35, Kyrie had 24, and it turned out to be a game filled with garbage time. Fourth quarter didn't have very much meaning, so that's why those point totals don't seem super high for a game in which Cleveland scored 135 points. There was a lot of garbage time, so the Cleveland bench ended up scoring a lot of points too. On the Boston side of the ball, Avery Bradley had 23, but that was about it. Not great shooting nights for Horford, Jay Crowder, and the Celtics did put up a valiant effort. They didn't get swept, which was impressive, especially with Isaiah Thomas going out after Game 2. And they're going to be a force for years to come. I mean, they have the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. Thank you, Brooklyn Nets. You're a great franchise. So they get the number 1 pick to add to this team that already made the Eastern Conference Finals. So the East is definitely going to reload with the Celtics getting better. The Raptors have always been decent. So don't expect the same level of dominance in years to come. This Celtics team is definitely going to become a force like they were in the days with Larry Bird and company, if they use this pick right. And we won't get into it. The whole Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz, are they even going to take a guard? Do they need one? Or maybe a wing player, maybe a Jason Tatum kind of guy, maybe a big man. But we won't get into that. Anyway, Cavs advance 4-1 into the NBA Finals. Let's flip to the Warriors, and they finished out their sweep with a good drumming of the Spurs in games 3 and 4. I don't really want to talk about these games a lot. I'll talk briefly about game 4, which the Warriors won relatively easily, 129-115. They took a big lead after the first quarter, and although the Spurs fought, they just didn't have the firepower, especially without Kawhi Leonard and Tony Parker. So, again, the Spurs are another good example of a team that's definitely going to reload this year. There are stories of them possibly... got something caught in my throat, of them possibly pursuing Chris Paul in free agency. You add Chris Paul with LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi, and you've got a team almost as talented as Golden State is. And so the sidekicks, so to say, like the villains, the teams that are pushing the Cavs and the Warriors are definitely going to reload this offseason. The Celtics getting the number 1 pick, the Spurs, they always do well in free agency. They can convince players to come if they can potentially get Chris Paul over to San Antonio. Anyway, we'll talk about the box score of Game 4 a little bit. The Warriors got 29 from Kevin Durant, 36 from Steph Curry. For San Antonio, Kyle Anderson led the way with 20 points. That kind of shows you what kind of game it is and what the series ended up being like for the Spurs without Tony Parker or Kawhi. Yeah. Kyle Anderson led the way in scoring. So now the focus for San Antonio comes into free agency and whether Manu Ginobili is going to retire. He's getting very old. He played pretty well this postseason, but, I mean, Tim Duncan is gone now. Tony Parker has been ravaged by injuries lately. Manu. So we'll see. It could really be the end of the Big Three era in San Antonio. If Ginobili retires, that would leave only Tony Parker, and it looks as though Tony Parker is going to be no more than a backup point guard in years to come if he decides to continue playing. So, Warriors-Cavs. Let's give a little preview. This is going to be a great times infinity series. I do believe it is going to go to 7 games. And I'll tell you who is going to win later when we look into the Woodruff Report crystal ball. But let's talk about matchups. And the first one is going to be Klay Thompson guarding Kyrie Irving. As you know, as a Warriors fan would know, Steph Curry doesn't guard the opposing team's best point guard. He's not a great defender. He's not an awful defender, and he actually gets a good amount of steals, but he's not a tremendous defender. So it'll be interesting to see. Klay Thompson is a very good defender, but Kyrie is an ultra amazing offensive force. So that's going to be huge. Can Klay Thompson lock down Kyrie while still being able to contribute points on the other end? Klay Thompson has been kind of cold this postseason. He has been missing shots. He hasn't had a great game yet. And he did not look good in the Spurs series. There was no game where he consistently made threes. So the Warriors do need to incorporate Klay Thompson because he is a weapon. When he's scoring, it stretches the opposing teams to extreme lengths because now you've got to get tight on this guy on the perimeter. And if Steph Curry's also feeling it or Kevin Durant's also feeling it, it's just a nightmare formula, and you're not going to beat the Warriors. So that Klay Thompson-Kyrie Irving matchup is going to be interesting. And it's not going to be who puts up more points. It's going to be, can Klay Thompson have a respectable offensive numbers while still being able to guard Kyrie? And guarding Kyrie, in my opinion, if Kyrie scores in that 15 to 20 point range, no more than 20, that's a successful defensive game. You're not going to be able to shut Kyrie out. You're not going to be able to hold him to like 5 points. If you do, that's tremendous, but that's going to happen once in a blue moon, especially in the NBA Finals, because he's proven to be a clutch player. But if you can limit his shots, make him pass the ball, then that is a success. Get other people the ball, make them make plays. And so moving on to another matchup, which is going to be the whole LeBron James guy, who's going to guard him. He's been dominating the Warriors these last few finals. He was a big reason why the series extended 2 years ago without Kyrie and K-Love. Last year he was dominating the block on Iguodala in Game 7. But so it's going to be interesting who's going to guard him. Iguodala has been a major defender of LeBron these past few years. Draymond maybe on him. KD looks like he might be on him. That's going to be a great matchup. Kevin Durant on LeBron James, if that happens. But it's very difficult to guard LeBron James with one player because he can play every position on the floor, including center. He can handle the ball at the point. He can play his natural 2 position or his natural 3. He can also be a great power forward, and he can even play center in a small downsized lineup. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Warriors keep one guy on him for the series or for even one of the games, or if they kind of just say, okay, we're going to just guard this guy the best we can with who we have on the floor and hope for the best. Hope he isn't just on fire and making every shot, which of course doesn't sound like a NBA kind of game plan, but with a player as good as LeBron, that's kind of what's going to happen. So then it's going to be another thing that's going to be interesting is the big man matchup, because Tristan Thompson has been absolutely devastating for the Cavs these last few years. He rebounds the ball. He's a grinder inside, and he's going to go against JaVale McGee or Zaza Pachulia in all likelihood. And one of the weaknesses of this Golden State Warriors team is rebounding on the defensive end, and offensive rebounds could be a key stat for the Cavaliers. Because when you give a team like the Cavs extra shots, that means extra points, and extra opportunities are never good, especially for a team with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, K-Love. So if Zaza and JaVale can clean up the boards, it bodes well for the Warriors. Steph Curry, who's going to guard him for the Cavs? Will it be Kyrie guarding him, or will it be Iman Shumpert or one of those guys? That's going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, no one can guard Steph when he gets going. But it'll be interesting to see if the Cavs decide to use Kyrie defensively on Steph, because you do have to spend a lot of energy chasing Steph around the court as he weaves through 300 screens, gets 1 inch of space, and buries a 3 in your face. That's tiring both physically and mentally and even emotionally. And then the final matchup is, of course, this KD guy, one of the best scorers in NBA history, the 7-footer who can handle. Who is going to guard him? Will it be LeBron? LeBron is a superior defender wrong word choice. LeBron is a great defender in clutch situations. He is not a superior defender to KD's offensive skill. But if Coach T. Lue decides to put LeBron on Kevin Durant, that's going to be a great matchup, seeing 2 future Hall of Famers just go at it for, in my opinion, 7 games. So those are some matchups to watch. Now let's look into the Woodruff Report's crystal ball to see who's going to win this series. Drum roll, please. Warriors in 7 games. The Woodruff Report crystal ball shows the Warriors eking it out in 7. This is going to be a tight game with everything you can imagine. Altercations, crazy runs, players who can't miss, J.R. Smith doing something stupid. This series is going to have it all. But the Warriors will win in Game 7 because they have too many threats offensively. And I do not think Kevin Love will have a good series. Kevin Love has not shown me enough for me to project him to be a super force. He's become kind of a three-point shooter for the Cavs, and I think the Warriors will be able to take him out of the game, make it a Kyrie and LeBron versus Steph, Clay, and KD. Draymond Green will be great. The Warriors will win this game in 7. Now, this is probably some hometown bias. I can't lie. I am rooting for the Warriors, but this is a pick that is not only coming from my heart, but is coming from my head. I think the Warriors are a far better defensive team than the Cavs have been, especially in these playoffs. These Cavs have not been very good defensively all season. So, and you don't want to be a bad defensive team against this Warriors team. So Warriors in 7. This is going to be a tremendous series. Be sure to tune in to every game. So I do want to shift gears for our second and final segment on this edition of the Woodruff Report. Let's talk about Champions League and Europa League qualifications for next year. La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, Premier League. We've got champions, and we know who is going to fill out the European leagues. So let's start with the Champions League, and let's start in England. Chelsea Football Club are your English champions. Antonio Conte, in his first season in charge of the Blues of Stamford Bridge, wins the Premier League title. Congratulations to Chelsea. Congratulations to John Terry, the longtime Chelsea captain, who has been more of a bench player this season and is hanging up his Chelsea boots at the end of the season. Great way to send him off. A great job all around for Chelsea. They were a terrific defensive team, and they did score enough goals to get it going. They played that counterattacking style with those sort of a 3 in the back or 5 in the back, depending on if they're on offense or defense. Great play from Pedro and Moses on the wings. Hazard was amazing this season. It all came together for Chelsea, and they win another title. They have been stealing these titles recently. Chelsea has been having a lot of success recently. So, Chelsea are your 2016-2017 Premier League champions. The Blues finish in first with 93 points, 7 points ahead of second place Tottenham, who had 86. A great season for Tottenham as well in their farewell to their home stadium, White Hart Lane. They beat Manchester United in the final game at White Hart Lane, and they just had one of their best seasons in a while, finally finishing above Arsenal for the first time in forever, and they definitely have the upper hand in that rivalry. They've got a bunch of great players. I mean, Harry Kane, Eriksen, Dele Alli, Kyle Walker, Vertonghen, Alderweireld. They have a team that can definitely challenge for the title in these coming years if they don't lose too many players. I really want them to get Isco. This is just kind of a side rant. I really want them to go and get Isco, the Real Madrid playmaker. I think he would fit very well with that team. So, Tottenham finishes in second. And so this is how it works. The top 4 teams from the top 4 leagues, which is the Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, and Premier League, all qualify automatically for the Champions League. Now, the 5th place team also qualifies for the Europa League from these teams, and then the winner of the respective competitions from these leagues also qualifies for the Champions League. By that I mean the winner of the FA Cup, the winner of the Coppa Italia, the winner of the DFB Pokal, the winner of the Copa del Rey. Each qualified for the Europa League if they have not already qualified for the Champions League. So, for example, if Chelsea also won the FA Cup, by the way, that game is occurring later today, then they do not also qualify for the Europa League because they've already qualified for the Champions League. But these are the teams that get Champions League football next year. Chelsea, Tottenham, Manchester City, and Liverpool will automatically qualify for the Champions League. Arsenal qualified for the Europa League, finishing 5th. Disappointing for Gunners fans, but they will at least get in a competition they might actually have a chance at winning. Manchester United finished 6th, so in theory they would not qualify for the Champions League or the Europa League, but they actually beat Ajax in the Europa League final, and the winner of the Europa League automatically qualifies for the Champions League. So, we're going to see 5 English teams automatically qualify for the Champions League group stage, with Arsenal going into the Europa League. Congratulations to all those teams. Also, congratulations to Everton on a great season. They finished in 7th behind Manchester United. Let's move on to Spain. And Spanish teams are doing very well recently in the Champions League. We've got Real Madrid and Atletico played last year in the final. And this year, Real Madrid is playing again against Juventus. So Spanish teams have traditionally done very well against other European opponents. And Real Madrid are champions of Spain. Congratulations to them. They finally, they've been second best to Barcelona these last few years. They hadn't won in a while, but they've won La Liga. Los Blancos are champions, the Galacticos, and they have a great team under Zinedine Zidane. Of course, Ronaldo. You've also got Modric, Toni Kroos. It's all going on down, and they have a good chance of winning the double, also winning the Champions League. I think they call that La Decima, but I'm not sure. I think La Decima is when they win the La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Champions League. But I'm not certain, so don't quote me on that. Anyway, the other teams that automatically qualify from Spain are Barcelona, who finished 2nd, Atletico Madrid, who finished 3rd, and Sevilla, who finished 4th. In 5th place was Villarreal, or Villarreal, depending on how you pronounce it. They qualify for the Europa League. Congratulations to them. And Real Sociedad almost had a magical season, finishing in 6th, but they will not qualify for the Champions League or Europa League. But magical run for them, absolutely. Just not the most financially, not a financial giant. Great coaching, heart, and they've almost made it into the Europa League. I'm sorry, actually. I just lied to you. The 5th and 6th teams in La Liga qualify for the Europa League, so Real Sociedad does qualify. I apologize for that mistake. Something sounded wrong to me about what I was saying, so I looked it up quickly, and the 5th and 6th teams do automatically qualify. So I apologize to any Real Sociedad fans that may be listening, and I broke their heart if they didn't know that their team had already qualified. So, congratulations to Sociedad and Villarreal for great seasons, finishing 5th and 6th respectively, and good luck in the Europa League. Good luck also to Sevilla, Atletico, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. They're stalwarts. They are always in the Champions League, and their fans expect great things, demand great things. Let's move to Italy, where Juventus became champions again. They've become dominant in these last few years with kind of the fall of AC Milan and Inter Milan, who've fallen on financial woes, and now they just haven't had great success. And Juventus has taken full advantage of what is going on in Milan and have won the last 5 Serie A championships. So congratulations to the old lady and Juventus on another Serie A win. The other teams that qualify for the Champions League from Italy are Juventus, obviously. Then you've got Napoli, who finished with their best point total ever. Congratulations. Roma and Lazio all qualify automatically for the Champions League. Congratulations to those 4 teams. The 2 teams who qualify for the Europa League in 5th and 6th are Atalanta, who were our Cinderella story, another team that hasn't traditionally been a superpower in Italy, but has taken advantage this season of some of the top teams being weaker than they normally are. Great season for Atalanta, and they'll get to play in the Europa League next year. They are accompanied by AC Milan. It's great to see them back in the Champions League where they belong. I mean, they are a superpower, and they've fallen on financial trouble recently. They were just taken over by some big Chinese investors, so there's money back in Milan, and that means more success because in this day and age, money equates to success in football. So, Juventus, Napoli, Roma, and Lazio Champions League, Atalanta and AC Milan Europa League. Finally, let's move to the Bundesliga, where Bayern Munich similarly to Juventus, won another championship. Congratulations to the Bavarian Giants on another great season. And this was not a very competitive season again because Dortmund, their traditional big counterparts, weren't as good as they have been. And Dortmund there are reports that they're going to lose their best player, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, this season to a huge transfer, maybe a world record sum. So that team may struggle to contend with Bayern in years to come. Anyway, so the teams that qualify for the Champions League from Germany are Bayern Munich, RB Leipzig. Yep. The new boys who just made it to the Bundesliga last season and are a very controversial story. They were taken over by Red Bull, who then pumped a bunch of money into the club, and they became a superpower almost overnight. So a lot of people have mixed feelings about them. Someone threw like a severed goat head onto the field one time when their team was playing RB Leipzig in protest because I'm not an expert. I can't talk to you. There are a bunch of YouTube videos about the whole controversy on RB Leipzig. I would definitely suggest going and watching those to understand all the feelings, all the extreme feelings that have arisen in German football because of RB Leipzig's rise. Anyway, Dortmund also qualifies for the Champions League after finishing third. And in fourth place, Hoffenheim. Yes, Hoffenheim with an incredible season. This is why you love the Bundesliga so much. Once you get past like Dortmund and Bayern, and with kind of the fall of Schalke and Leverkusen, who haven't been as good recently as they were before, also Wolfsburg and Werder Bremen haven't been as good as they were in the past, these few spots can go to smaller clubs who wouldn't have a chance in the Premier League when there are 6 or 7 just top teams. They have a chance to qualify like Hoffenheim did. Yes, Hoffenheim will be playing Champions League football. Congratulations on a great season. Now, similar to Italy and Spain, the 5th and 6th teams both qualify for the Europa League. So, FC Köln and Hertha Berlin will be playing in the Europa League. Congratulations to them. And 2, again, smaller clubs who their supporters will have tons of fun getting to travel around Europe and play in a European competition. So, congratulations to those teams. That's a quick roundup of European qualification around the league. Around Europe. So I did promise to keep this episode brief, and I'm sorry it did end up being a little bit long. My apologies. This has been the Woodruff Report. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We talked about the 3rd edition, the Cavs-Warriors Game 3, and then I talked a little bit about European leagues and qualification for Champions League and Europa League. This has been the Woodruff Report. I'm your host, David Woodruff. Please join us next week. Thank you for listening.